Imagine for a moment the Bible, that familiar leather-bound volume, a cornerstone of faith for billions, its table of contents settled, its chapters known. But what if I told you that this is not the whole story? What if the Bible you know is merely an abridged version, a condensed history, while the full, uncut, and most ancient edition has been sitting in plain sight, guarded for centuries in a kingdom carved from the Ethiopian highlands? This is not a conspiracy theory, it is a historical fact, a story of divine kings, desert monks, and books of such profound mystery they were lost to the rest of the world for over 1,000 years. We are about to embark on a journey into the heart of this mystery, to explore the Ethiopian Bible, a collection of 81 sacred books, a library that includes texts so explosive they redefine our understanding of the ancient biblical world. This is a tale of how a single nation became the ark for a lost scriptural tradition, protecting secrets about fallen angels, celestial journeys, and the very origins of sin itself, while Europe debated and the sands of Egypt slowly buried other scrolls. So, prepare to have everything you thought you knew challenged as we unlock the secrets of the world's oldest and most complete Bible. Our story begins not in a library, but in a landscape, a realm of breathtaking beauty and formidable isolation, the Ethiopian highlands. These are not gentle hills, they are soaring plateaus, rugged mountains, and deep-cut valleys, a natural fortress that has repelled invaders and insulated cultures for millennia. It was here, amidst this dramatic topography, that one of the ancient world's most powerful empires rose to prominence, the Aksumite Kingdom. Picture a bustling metropolis, Aksum, its skyline punctuated by towering, needle-like obelisks, some over 100 feet tall, carved from single slabs of granite, testaments to an engineering prowess that rivaled Egypt. This was not some remote outpost. It was a hub of global trade, a nexus on the routes connecting the Mediterranean world with the empires of India and the interior of Africa. Roman merchants bartered here, Persian silks were traded, and Aksumite coins, inscribed in both Greek and Ge'ez, circulated across the known world. This kingdom was a melting pot of cultures, a crucible where African, Semitic, and Greco-Roman influences fused, creating a unique and sophisticated civilization, a civilization that would become the unshakable foundation for a faith with a very unique scripture. The spiritual identity of this empire, the very bedrock of its national consciousness, is rooted in a single, epic legend, a story so powerful it shaped a nation's destiny for 2,000 years. This is the story told in the Kebra Nagast, the glory of the kings, Ethiopia's national epic. It begins with a legendary journey, the voyage of the Queen of Sheba, known in Ethiopia as Makeda, from her prosperous kingdom in Aksum to the court of King Solomon in Jerusalem. The Bible briefly mentions her visit, a tale of riddles and exchanged gifts, but the Kebra Nagast expands this into a profound narrative of wisdom, romance, and divine purpose. Makeda, a wise and powerful monarch, travels to learn from Solomon's famed wisdom, and there a son is conceived, Menelik, who would carry the very bloodline of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba back to Ethiopia. This is more than a fairy tale. It is a claim of divine royalty, a Solomonic dynasty that would rule Ethiopia with only a brief interruption until the last emperor, Haile Selassie, in the 20th century. But the legend does not end with a bloodline. It culminates in the greatest treasure heist in religious history. The story goes that when Menelik came of age, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father. Upon his return to Ethiopia, he was accompanied by a retinue of the firstborn sons of the Israelite nobles. And in the dead of night, guided by the will of God, these young men, led by Azariah, the son of the high priest Zadok, performed a sacred switch. They took the Ark of the Covenant, the very vessel containing the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, the earthly throne of God himself, and replaced it with a perfect replica. They smuggled the true Ark out of Jerusalem and brought it in a triumphant procession back to Aksum. To this day, Ethiopians believe, with unshakable conviction, that the Ark rests in a small chapel, the Chapel of the Tablet, adjacent to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Aksum. It is guarded by a single monk, a virgin, who dedicates his entire life to its protection, never leaving the sanctuary grounds until his death, when another is chosen to take his place. This belief that they are the new Zion, the chosen guardians of God's most profound covenant, forged an identity built not just on kingship, but on divine guardianship. If you are the protectors of the Ark, what else must you protect? The entire sacred tradition, every book, every word, every revelation. This monumental task of preservation fell to a dedicated and isolated community of faith, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The word Tewahedo means unified, signifying their belief in the unified divine and human nature of Christ, a Christology that set them apart from the churches of Rome and Constantinople after the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD. This theological difference, combined with their geographical isolation, created a perfect storm for scriptural preservation. While the rest of Christendom, from the Mediterranean to Gaul, was embroiled in violent debates, church councils, and political machinations that led to the standardization and, some would say, the pruning of the biblical canon, Ethiopia was insulated. The fierce debates at the Council of Carthage in 397 AD, where the 27 books of the New Testament were formally ratified, were distant echoes. The decisions about which books were inspired and which were apocryphal, made by bishops thousands of miles away, simply did not reach the highland monasteries. Their canon was not trimmed. It was allowed to grow and solidify organically, resulting in a biblical collection of staggering size and diversity. So what exactly is in this vast library? Let us open its pages and explore its contents. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible is not merely the standard 66 books with a few extras tacked on the end. It is a completely reorganized and expanded scriptural universe. It contains all the books you would expect: the Genesis, the Psalms, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But it also includes books that other Christian traditions consider deuterocanonical, like Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach, Baruch, and the books of Maccabees. But here is where it truly diverges. It includes texts that were entirely lost to the Western world for over a millennium, books that were known only by name or through fragments and references in the writings of the early church fathers, who often condemned them. The most famous of these are the books of Enoch, Jubilees, and a unique set of books called Maccabean, which are distinct from the Maccabees known in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles. To understand the significance of this, we must journey to the very source of this preservation, the remote monasteries and scriptoriums where the physical act of safeguarding this treasure took place. Imagine a monastery hewn directly into the face of a sheer cliff in the Geralta Mountains, accessible only by rope ladders and narrow footpaths, or a community of monks living on one of the secluded islands of Lake Tana, the source of the Blue Nile. In these silent holy places, the most sacred work, besides prayer, was copying. Generation after generation of scribes, trained from childhood, dedicated their entire lives to the meticulous, reverent task of transcribing the sacred texts. This was not a mechanical process. It was a profound act of devotion, a spiritual discipline. The scribe would prepare his own materials, scraping the hides of goats or sheep to create vellum, crafting inks from soot, crushed minerals, and plant dyes using a reed pen, a kalam, cut with precise skill. He would write in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language that, like Latin in the West, became a sacred language of liturgy, frozen in time, understood by the priests and scholars, but not by the common people. The process was slow, deliberate, and filled with ritual. Before writing the name of God, the scribe might pause to wash his hands. A single mistake could mean scraping away the entire line of text, or even discarding the entire page. These were not plain texts. They were illuminated masterpieces, vibrant with color, filled with intricate illustrations of biblical scenes, angels with vibrant wings, and saints with distinct Ethiopian features. The binding was itself a work of art, thick wooden boards covered in tooled leather, sometimes with a protruding hub, a tukul, and often a protective leather cover, a mahdar that could be tied shut, enclosing the sacred words within. This unbroken chain of scribal devotion, spanning centuries, is the sole reason we have the complete books of Enoch and Jubilees today. They were not hidden in a cave like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were kept alive, in continuous use, copied and recopied, their words chanted in liturgy, their stories informing the faith of an entire nation. They were not lost, they were protected. Now let us turn our attention to the contents of these legendary lost books, starting with the most famous and enigmatic of them all, the Book of Enoch. Who was Enoch? In the Standard Bible, he is a mysterious, fleeting figure. In the 5th chapter of Genesis, we are given a genealogy, a list of names and years, but Enoch stands out. The text says, and I quote, "Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away." That is it. A tantalizing glimpse of a man who did not die, but was taken by God. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch, however, is not a glimpse. It is a sprawling, cosmic narrative that explains everything. It is traditionally divided into 5 main sections, and it begins with a prophecy of the Great Flood and the final judgment, a warning delivered by Enoch himself. But the heart of the book, the section that has captivated and troubled readers for centuries, is the Book of the Watchers. This section tells a story of celestial rebellion, a narrative that provides the shocking backstory to one of the most cryptic passages in all of Scripture, Genesis chapter 6, which states, "When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, 'My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Who are these sons of God? Who are the Nephilim?' The Book of Enoch provides the devastating details. The sons of God were a group of 200 angels, called the Watchers, tasked with watching over humanity. Their leader was Semyaza. Overcome with lust for the beautiful human women, they descended to earth, committing themselves to a terrible pact on Mount Hermon. But their sin did not stop at forbidden relationships. The book names other watchers, like Azazel, and describes how they began to teach humanity forbidden arts, knowledge that heaven never intended for mortals. Azazel taught men how to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He introduced them to the science of metallurgy and warfare. He taught the women the art of deception, how to make bracelets, ornaments, and the use of cosmetics, leading to vanity and promiscuity. Other watchers taught sorcery, astrology, root-cutting, and the secrets of enchantments. This was the forbidden knowledge that corrupted the earth, filling it with violence, bloodshed, and spiritual pollution. The union of these fallen watchers and human women produced the Nephilim, who are described not just as heroes, but as giant, violent hybrids who consumed all the possessions of men and then began to devour humanity itself, drinking their blood. This is the full, horrifying context for the flood. It was not merely a punishment for general human wickedness, it was a surgical cosmic cleanup operation, a necessary reset to purge the earth of these monstrous hybrids and the corrupting influence of the fallen angels. Enoch himself plays a central role in this drama. He is a righteous man caught between heaven and earth. The fallen watchers, terrified of the judgment they know is coming, appeal to Enoch to intercede for them, to take a petition before God. Enoch ascends to heaven, is shown the divine throne, and is given a vision of the coming deluge and the ultimate fate of the watchers, who are to be bound in the depths of the earth until the final judgment. The book describes Enoch's celestial journeys, his tours of the cosmos, where he is shown the storehouses of the wind, the foundations of the earth, the resting places of the dead, and the fiery prison being prepared for Azazel and his host. This is a complex, layered cosmology that profoundly influenced Jewish thought in the centuries before Christ. Its impact is undeniable because this book, lost to the West, is actually quoted in the New Testament. The Epistle of Jude, verses 14 and 15, directly references the prophecy of Enoch, saying, "See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone, and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodly way." This is a direct quote from the first chapter of the Book of Enoch. The early Christian church was clearly aware of this text, and, for a time, considered it authoritative. Alongside Enoch stands another foundational text, the Book of Jubilees. If Enoch expands the cosmic scope of the Bible, Jubilees rewinds and reframes its historical narrative. It is sometimes called the Little Genesis, but that is a misnomer. It is a radical reinterpretation. The book presents itself as a revelation given to Moses by the angel of the presence during his 40 days on Mount Sinai. It claims to contain the entire history of the world, from creation until the giving of the law, as recorded on the heavenly tablets. The narrative retells Genesis and the first part of Exodus, but with crucial differences, additions, and a relentless theological agenda. One of its most defining features is its obsession with a strict solar calendar. The book vehemently opposes the lunar calendar used by other Jewish groups, insisting that God's true calendar is a 364-day solar calendar, divided into 4 seasons of exactly 13 weeks each. This calendar, it argues, was followed by the patriarchs Noah, Abraham, and Moses, and its observance is a sign of faithfulness. To break this calendar is to break covenant with God. This may seem like a minor technical point, but it was a monumental issue in the Second Temple period. It was about identity, about being set apart. The community that produced the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes, also followed this same 364-day solar calendar, a fact that creates a direct link between the world of Jubilees and the sectarian Judaism of Qumran. Jubilees also fills in the narrative gaps of Genesis with breathtaking detail. It provides extensive backstory for characters who are barely mentioned in the canonical text. For instance, it tells the story of Mastema, the chief of the evil spirits, who pleads with God to allow some of the spirits to remain on earth to corrupt and lead humanity astray. It elaborates on the life of Abraham, his struggles against idolatry, and the tests of his faith. It provides a detailed and often harsh legal code, emphasizing strict separation from Gentiles. The presence of these books in the Ethiopian canon is not an accident. It is a testament to the deep and ancient Jewish roots of Ethiopian Christianity. The Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jewish community, have their own ancient tradition in the region, and their scriptures also include Enoch and Jubilees. This suggests that when Christianity arrived in Aksum, likely in the 4th century AD, through merchants and missionaries, It did not arrive on a blank slate. It encountered a population already steeped in a form of Judaism that revered these expansive texts. The conversion of the Aksumite king, Ezana, by a Syrian Christian named Frumentius, did not erase this foundation. It built upon it. The Ethiopian church absorbed the entire existing scriptural library, the wider Canon of Alexandrian Judaism, which included these books, and saw no reason to discard them. They were part of the sacred heritage, the complete story. This unique scriptural foundation gave rise to a Christianity that is visually, liturgically, and theologically distinct. You can see it in the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, 11 magnificent structures carved directly downward into the living rock in the 12th and 13th centuries. These are not buildings constructed from the ground up. They are sculptures on a monumental scale, excavated from the earth, their roofs level with the ground. The most famous, Bet Georgis, or St. George's, is a perfect cross, a 30-foot deep trench carved into the volcanic tuff, the church itself a monolithic masterpiece within. The interior of these churches is dark, mysterious, illuminated by flickering candles, the walls covered in vibrant frescoes depicting biblical scenes and saints, their features unmistakably African. The liturgy is a sensual experience, the air thick with incense, the sound of the drum, the sistrum, and the deep resonant prayer chants in Ge'ez filling the space. The priests, in brilliant white robes and colorful vestments, perform rituals that feel ancient, that recall the temple in Jerusalem, including the use of ceremonial drums and the carrying of prayer sticks, a possible echo of the staffs of the Levites. The festivals are equally unique. The most spectacular is Timkat, the Epiphany, a 3-day celebration of the baptism of Christ. It is a festival of joy, color, and profound faith. The tablets, or replicas of the Ark of the Covenant from each church, are wrapped in rich cloths and borne on the heads of priests in a grand, solemn procession to a nearby body of water. Thousands of worshippers dressed in white follow the tablets, singing and dancing through the night. At dawn, the priest blesses the water and the faithful plunge in, reenacting their own baptism. This direct, physical connection to the symbolism of the Ark is something you will find nowhere else in the Christian world. It is a living, breathing tradition, directly fueled by the unique scriptural and legendary heritage of the Kebra Nagast and the 81-book Bible. For the Western world, these lost books remained just that, lost until the late 18th century. The Scottish explorer James Bruce of Kinnaird, a man of immense curiosity and endurance, spent years travelling through North Africa and Ethiopia. From 1768 to 1773, he was searching for the source of the Nile, but his most lasting discovery was literary. He managed to acquire several copies of the Ethiopian Bible and, crucially, 3 complete copies of the Book of Enoch in Ge'ez. When he returned to Europe, he presented his findings, but the academic world was skeptical. They could not believe that a complete text of Enoch, known only through fragments and quotes, had survived. It seemed too fantastic to be true. But Bruce was vindicated. The manuscripts were authentic. They were translated into English, first in excerpts and then in full, causing a sensation in theological and scholarly circles. For the first time, scholars could read the full text that had so influenced the writers of the New Testament and the early church. It was as if a lost continent of religious thought had suddenly risen from the sea. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the mid-20th century provided stunning confirmation. Among the scrolls found in the caves of Qumran were multiple, extensive Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch. These fragments, dating back to the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, proved that the book was not a later Christian fabrication, as some had alleged, but was indeed a pre-Christian Jewish work that was held as sacred by at least one major Jewish sect. The Ethiopic version was confirmed to be a remarkably faithful translation of these ancient Aramaic originals. Similarly, fragments of Jubilees were also found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, cementing its importance in understanding Second Temple Judaism. The Ethiopian Church, through its centuries of isolation and devotion, had preserved the most complete versions of texts that the rest of the world had only ever known in fragments. So what are we to make of this today? The existence of the Ethiopian Bible challenges us to think differently about the very concept of a fixed, closed canon. It shows us that the Bible, as we know it, is the product of historical processes, of debates and decisions made by specific groups of people in specific places. The Ethiopian tradition represents another path, a road not taken by the Western Church, a road that kept the library doors open wider. These books do not necessarily undermine the faith. For millions of Ethiopian Christians, they enrich it. They provide a fuller, more detailed and more cosmic narrative of the struggle between good and evil, of the origins of sin, and the scope of God's plan. They remind us that the ancient world of the Bible was a world of vibrant diversity, of competing ideas and rich theological speculation. The Ethiopian Bible is more than a historical curiosity. It is a living testament to the power of preservation, a monument to a nation that saw itself as the guardian of a divine trust. It is a treasure that was saved, not for themselves alone, but for the entire world, a reminder that history and faith always have more to reveal.